Howdy, I'm the Barnyard Mare, Duchess of the Prairie. I've been cowboying for over 27 years and I've learned an awful lot in them years. You know, I'm not that great of a roper, but I can get it done. It ain't pretty. But most of the roping I've seen done out in the wild, it ain't pretty. You know, you get to watching them rodeos and you see it, and all them cowboys, they get out there and they get it whoop-stitched done in about less than 10 seconds. Well, that's all fine and dandy. But you know, there's fences there. When you're out in the wild, yeah, there's fences around the pasture, but there's nothing there to keep that animal from running over and jumping off into a draw. Well, it gets wild and woolly. I've seen to where you've ended up in water holes and ditches, and I've seen, and I couldn't believe it. Oh my, it was crazy. We went out to catch 2 bulls, and old Emmett, the boss man, brought his little boy with us. He's about 15. He's a pretty good roper. We had to rope a couple of young yearling bulls because they'd gotten into our place and we was getting ready to gather and we didn't want to bring them home with us. So we get out there and I get out and set the panels up pretty near where the bulls are. And that kid gets out there and he gets ready and he goes up and them bulls just stand there looking at him like, "You bringing us dinner?" He throws a rope on one bull. Old Emmett opens the trailer gate and the kid goes, "Well, what am I going to do?" The bull that didn't have the rope on him saw that the trailer was opened. He walks over and gets right in. So the kid rides the horse over there and the bull that's on the rope just kind of comes along like he's leading. He's broke the lead. Well, we get them loaded up and we load it. It took us longer to put the panels out than it did to get the bulls in the trailer. Well, that doesn't always happen. One time I was sent out to gather with Larry and Alan. And this pasture, it was a small one, about 250 acres. But it was the roughest riding. Had draws full of trees. Down at the bottoms of the draws, ponds and marshes. And this pasture had a way of making very calm critters turn into wild beasts. They'd scatter. And we were gathering them one year. There was just 88 steers to gather. And here we are, we're riding and we got all 88 and we're getting them into the trap, and then somebody decides to break. And the race was on. We had a dad-blame scramble that took us about 20 minutes to gather up, and in that 20 minutes we ended up losing about 8 critters. So we took the 80 home, but we're still pretty proud of ourselves because last year we'd only gathered 75 and we had to go gather the rest. And we were going to come back the next day, but we ended up getting some pretty bad weather, so we had to wait two weeks to get back down that dirt road to catch them. So the boss sends Larry and Alan and me out there to gather, and he says, "Oh, surely 3 cowboys can handle the situation." Well, the day didn't start out well. It was so foggy you couldn't see 30 feet in front of the pickup. So we all took our rain slickers because it was just misty, nasty. It was the coldest day and the foggiest day of August I ever remember. We get out there and it takes us about 3 hours before we spot these critters. And old Alan goes, "I think I see something moving up there." So I get my glasses out and I scan around. Yep, I counted 7. Put my field glasses back in my saddlebag and I said, "We better get to moving. They're headed for that first draw, boys." And we take off and Larry and I are racing for the draw. I don't know where Alan disappeared to. But we get to the draw and them critters beat us to it and they're going down lickety-split. Alan hollers, "I'm going on top," which means he's going to go race around on the top of the hill to get around to the end of the draw. And I'm going to follow him down. Well, now at the bottom of this draw, there's a pond. And 4 draws come into it, one from each direction. And if those critters get down there, they can split up and we're in big trouble. So I just dive down into this draw right behind him, and my horse is slipping and sliding, and I have to pull her up because she's going to fall with me, and I don't want to fall in the mud. And I'm ducking around in the trees. And I can hear them cattle crashing through, and then I hear a big splash. Well, I know they're by the pond. So I get down there into the opening right there at the pond, and those steers are on the south end of the pond. But there's Larry up on this side, and there's Alan up on this side, and then they turn and look at me and start back. 2 of them dive into the pond. The other 5, I didn't want them to go in the pond, so I just spurred my old horse right into the pond. And those 5, they turned and then they head south, and there goes Alan and Larry, and I'm left with the 2 frogs in the pond. Well, they get the 5 caught, and then they hurry on back, and I'm still standing there in the water with these frogs. Larry hollers down, he says, "Throw a loop on one and we'll get the other." And I'm thinking, yeah, this will be great. I'll throw a loop on one and I'll catch 2, and then we will have a wreck. So I get up as close as I dare, and them steers don't move. So I just kind of toss that rope over, and I get one and I snag it. Well, at that second, that other steer, he takes off up the west draw, and I see Larry come diving down the hill to follow up in the brush. Now that brush that he's going up through, you can't walk through, but yet he was running his horse pretty hard chasing that steer. And the steer that I had on the end of my rope, he decided he was going to try to escape too, but when he hit the end of the rope, I was just starting to come out of the water, and he hit that mud and flipped over upside down, and that gave me time to get out and get my horse wrapped around a tree so I could wrap my rope. I got him tied and snugged pretty good, and took my other rope off. You always carry 2 ropes out in the wild. If you don't use one, your buddy probably will need one. So I took my other rope down, and I got him healed, and I just kind of snugged him up to another tree and got his legs to where they were up a little high, and he wasn't choked, and I thought, I'm gonna go check on the guys. Well, I get up to the top of the draw, and there's Larry, cussing and moaning and groaning and getting on his horse. His brand new rain slicker that his wife gave him for his birthday the day before, shredded. I go, "What happened to you?" He says, "I just getting to the top, and the dad blame rain slicker snagged on a tree branch and jerked me off. And I had to bite my tongue." Larry's in his early 60s, and that man's never been bucked off a horse for 20 years. So I suppressed my little giggle, and I go, "Where's Alan?" He said, "The last I seen, he went down in that draw, and I think he had that critter caught." He says, "But I don't hear nothing." So we get over there to the edge, and sure enough, there's Alan down there, sitting on his horse's head. Ropes tangled around his horse, ropes tangled around his steer. His rain slicker's opened up, and his white shirt isn't white anymore, it's muddy. Larry shakes his head, and I go, "I swear I've never seen such a wreck in all my years." And I got to laughing. He got to laughing. Alan hollers up, "When you get done laughing at us, you can come down here and help me get untangled from this mess." So we ride down there and assess the situation, and I help Alan get his horse untangled from the rope. And we get another rope on the steer's head and get the steer untangled from the rope. We upright Alan's horse, and I go off to get the truck and trailer, and we bring him up. Go get the one I had tied to the tree and bring him up, and then we loaded the other 5 up. And we loaded the horses in the trailer, and we're starting down the road, and I get to thinking, wasn't we supposed to get 8? And I start laughing. And Larry goes, "What's the matter with you? You lose your mind?" "Yeah, I guess. We were supposed to get 8. I said, "Surely 3 cowboys can handle the situation." Larry had to stop the truck. We'd all 3 started laughing. We'd had such a bad day. And we just sat there and laughed and laughed and laughed, and finally somebody said, "Well, we better get home." So we pull into the feed yard, and we back the trailer up and unload the steer, and old boss man comes out, and he's going counting. He says, "Hey, fellas." He called me a fella. Ain't that funny? "I thought you was supposed to get 8. And I thought Larry was going to haul off and hit the boss. Larry and him was good friends, but he kind of walked over and I thought, oh boy, here we go. He put his hand on the boss's shoulder and, not today, old man, not today. And the boss kind of laughed. He says, well, I knew you wasn't going to get ate. He says, after you left, neighbor down the road called and said that he brought his cows in yesterday and he had our steer in with the cows. He kind of laughed. And then he looks at us and he says, what happened to you? So we told him the story and he says, go on home. You guys need to go home and lick your wounds anyway. And he said, Larry, he says, if it's anything to you, I'll buy you another rain slicker so your wife doesn't wring your neck.